Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So glad you could join us. Today, we're tackling a subject that, well, you've probably been hearing a lot about the assisted dying bill. It's causing some really intense debate, and it's facing a really critical vote in Parliament. And this isn't just about politics, is it? It really challenges our core ideas about autonomy, compassion, what it means to live and die with dignity. Our goal here is to distill the key arguments, maybe some surprising insights from the sources you've shared, so you walk away feeling, well, properly informed. And to help us navigate all this complexity, we've got a fantastic guide with us today.
It's great to be here. These are such important conversations touching on really deep aspects of human experience.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's start with the basics. For anyone trying to get their head around the details, what exactly does this assisted dying bill propose? What are the main points?
Right. So the bill seeks to legalize assisted dying, but only for terminally ill adults here in the UK. And the conditions are quite strict. The person needs a confirmed prognosis, fewer than 6 months left to live. They also have to be mentally competent, capable of making the decision, and it has to be a clear, voluntary request that they've sustained over time. And critically, it needs approval from 2 independent doctors and a high court judge.
Okay, and just to be really clear on one point, this isn't euthanasia where a doctor administers something, right? It's about the patient themselves.
That's a really vital distinction, yes. The bill is very specific that the patient must self-administer the prescribed medication. It puts the patient's own agency, their autonomy, right at the center.
Okay, now this is where the politics get, well, fascinatingly complex. You hear it described as being on a knife edge in Parliament. Why is it so tight? Why such deep divisions?
Well, it's what's called a conscience vote. So MPs aren't voting along party lines. They vote based on their personal beliefs, their own conscience. And that naturally leads to these really profound splits right across all the parties. It touches on deeply held views about moral responsibility, individual freedom, and how we protect vulnerable people.
And we know different groups are sort of weighing in very heavily. Public support seems high, but there are serious concerns too.
Absolutely. You see polls suggesting nearly 80% public support, which is significant. But there's strong opposition, too. It comes from various places, some religious organizations, disability rights groups, advocates for the elderly. Their main ethical worry often centers on the slippery slope idea.
Ah, yes, the fear that the rules might loosen over time.
Exactly. A fear that even with tight safeguards now, the criteria could gradually expand, maybe to include non-terminal conditions or people with psychiatric illnesses down the line. And there's another deep concern, too, the potential for subtle coercion, the worry that someone might feel pressured, maybe not even consciously, to choose assisted dying so they aren't seen as a burden.
That idea of subtle pressure, especially with societal attitudes towards, aging or disability, it really makes you question what choice means here. Is it truly free?
That's right at the heart of the ethical debate, isn't it? Critics are really concerned that this perceived pressure could undermine genuine autonomy. It's a very difficult balance they're trying to strike.
Maybe looking elsewhere could give us some perspective. Oregon, for instance, they've had a similar law since, what, 1997? What have we learned from their experience?
Oregon is often looked at, yes. And what's quite interesting is the actual usage rate. It's remained surprisingly low, around 0.5%, 0.5% of all deaths each year. And that figure is quite revealing. It suggests that for many people, just knowing the option is there gives them a significant sense of peace of mind, a feeling of control, even if they never actually use it.
So the impact isn't just the number of people who use it, but the psychological comfort, that sense of control you mentioned.
Precisely. For proponents of the bill, that dignity and control in the face of terminal illness is, well, paramount.
And I have to remember, this isn't just abstract law and numbers, it's incredibly personal. I was reading about a woman, Margaret, whose father had late-stage cancer. His suffering was immense, even with good palliative care. Those kinds of stories are really powerful drivers for people supporting the bill.
Yes, that kind of experience is a very real, very potent illustration of why this issue resonates so deeply for some people. While palliative care is often excellent, there are, unfortunately, some cases where suffering at the end of life is intractable. So for some, assisted dying is seen as a path to a peaceful chosen end. But it also really highlights the huge responsibility to make sure any choice is truly free, to protect vulnerable people, perhaps people worrying about being a burden from any kind of pressure. It's incredibly complex on a human level.
So as Parliament gets closer to this really tight vote, what are the ultimate stakes? What does the outcome actually mean?
Oh, the stakes are huge. If it passes, it's a massive shift in British law. It would recognize, under these very strict conditions, a terminally ill patient's right to choose their end. If it fails, well, it could be years, maybe even decades, before the issue gets seriously looked at again by Parliament, despite that high public support we mentioned. But, whatever happens with the vote, this conversation isn't going away. We can almost certainly expect more debate, probably more legal challenges down the road. Yeah, I think ultimately this whole debate really forces us all to think hard about what it means to care for each other, especially at the end of life. It really brings together law, ethics, medicine, and just fundamental human compassion, doesn't it?
That's a really insightful way to frame it, focusing on that human element. Thank you. That was incredibly helpful in navigating such a complex and really vital subject. And to you, our listener, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this gives you plenty to think about as you continue to follow these critical issues. Until next time, take care.